Hello, greetings, welcome to Attaining the Second Cognition. This is Doug Michael. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking your time to join me. Every video I've done over the years has been designed to instruct my viewers to think more critically and alter their perceptions to see a larger picture. This presentation is very difficult for me to do. Before you get angry with me, realize that this is not meant as a personal attack on anyone. It's not about that. I could think of 1,000 things I'd rather be doing. Over the past few months, we've emphasized the need for discernment in order to grow your own psyche beyond indoctrinated patterns of thinking. Every video we produce is designed to help people to learn more critical thinking processes, and this is necessary because we have all been so dumbed down as a society that even when we presume we're thinking critically, we are still very often only seeing the superficial aspects of relearning how to think critically. Each of us has that capability, but due to cultural and educational indoctrination, few of us indeed have grown the wisdom to see beyond the superficial renderings of what we think we know. That leads us to the title of this video, and that is What Goes Unsaid, the Cognitive Bait and Switch. In order for any of us to develop our intuitive insights, it often takes another person with a keener insight to offer perspectives that may differ from our own. Offering such insights is not the same as providing just simple opinions in all cases, but tragically, for the most part, that's all it is with most people. In order to relearn lost cognitive capabilities, we usually need someone who can point us in the right direction for understanding. This presentation is going to provide my listeners and viewers with an opportunity to learn how to look deeper into things that pass our notice on a mostly superficial first cognition level of reckoning. Most of the time, we deal with things at face value, always paying attention to what is said by others, and the vast majority of people have not yet developed the insight or discernment to see what is being insinuated through innuendo or what is unsaid. This video is a lesson on how to learn to deconstruct things that most people usually miss, and admittedly, both the Beals and I had these cognitive blind spots as well, so don't think we're elevating ourselves above our listeners by pointing out the examples in this video for your scrutiny. This is a lesson not only in critical thinking, but a lesson on how to hone your discernment to a sharp edge. We're going to provide a few examples of propaganda through unsaid innuendo, as well as the standard bait and switch tactic exhibited in much of the New Age as well as the so-called truth movement. After providing these examples, each of you is invited to take what you learned from this video and more closely scrutinize the world around you and see what you can detect what goes unsaid as learning tool in order to perceive how well you can learn to determine bait and switch tactics designed to misdirect your perceptions into someone else's rabbit hole. As a starting point, let's take a look at the idea about the alleged bloodline of Jesus, following the ideas of the Dan Brown novel and the movie The Da Vinci Code. Dan Brown got the notoriety, but the modern idea used by Dan Brown finds its origins in the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail by Michael Bagent, Richard Ley, and Henry Lincoln, released in 1982. Dan Brown basically stole the idea from Bagent, Lincoln, and Ley and didn't even give a nod of credit to the original authors for his fame and wealth accumulated through the book sales and movie rights. Be that as it may, if you have read Brown's book or seen the movie, then you should be familiar with the premise that some purported bloodline of Jesus survived through Mary Magdalene and spawned the later Merovingian dynasty in France. This myth is built upon the old stories about the Holy Grail, which Bagent, Lincoln, and Ley asserted signified the bloodline of Jesus through his alleged offspring with Mary Magdalene. This mythical tradition is still alive and well in Masonic propaganda books like America, Nation of the Goddess by Alan Butler and Jane Walter. From the Holy Blood, Holy Grail pseudo-historical perspective, we find the secret society, the Priory of Sion, which supposedly guarded this secret of the alleged bloodline that also played a role in Dan Brown's film. It's all a propaganda song and dance, ladies and gentlemen, without an ounce of credible evidence to support the idea, yet Freemasonic writers are having a field day promoting this nonsense, and the sad thing is how many people believe the myth of some mystical bloodline of Jesus without question. So, Let's break this mythology down somewhat, ladies and gentlemen. On one hand, we are told by the Masonic propagandists that the secret the Vatican doesn't want told and fears the most in this mythology is the fact that the personage known as Jesus was not the Son of God, but was in fact only a human mystical teacher. This part of the mythology is not new, as it goes back to the early centuries when Christian cults were sorting themselves out, trying to figure out just who and what Jesus was. Some schools of thought, naturally deemed heretical to the Roman Church, revered Jesus as a man who was simply a great teacher. We know which side the Roman Church came down on in that argument. With this modern Masonic mythology, it seems these Masons can't quite get their story straight. Some claim that their teachings spring from some of these Gnostic sects who only admitted that Jesus was a man, yet although embracing these purported religious foundations about Jesus not being divine, this modern Masonic propaganda wants to have their cake and eat it too. Here is what goes unsaid in this propaganda story. If they profess a heritage from religious traditions that Jesus was only a man and not a divine being, then how is his alleged bloodline any different than yours or mine, ladies and gentlemen? On one hand, they want to deny his alleged divinity, but on the other hand, they want to support this myth about how special and holy his bloodline is without coming out and admitting what Christian doctrine says about the man. You see, they can't have it both ways, but because they don't specifically say what they want to say, such as that according to their traditions, Jesus was just a man, they do not remove the idea that Jesus was divine either. They let an assumption based on what goes unsaid to lead people to conclusions that they want you to see without any truthful spelling it out. Either he was divine and his bloodline is special, or he was just a man and his bloodline has no more merit than anyone else's. So, since they can't tell you that they endorse Jesus' divinity, they leave people who read this fanciful tale to leap to that conclusion, and then what goes unsaid creates a mythological belief in a divine bloodline in which the Masons themselves don't believe. At least, not so long as they want to claim a Gnostic heritage that denies the divinity of Jesus. This is just one example of the chicanery of modern propagandist mythology foisted on the public by things that go unsaid. Leaving those who believe in Jesus to buy into this holy bloodline bullshit is simply a cognitive bait and switch. Now let's take another example of an equivalent unsaid innuendo often proposed through the speculative propaganda spewed out in the Ancient Aliens TV show. As anyone who has watched the show and actually thought about the unsupported speculations presented in every episode, we get two stories. The purpose of the show, just like modern Freemasonry, is to shake the foundations of the Christian religion. If you haven't figured that out yet, then you definitely need to pay more attention. We reported in our video, Blowing the Anunnaki Story Wide Open, how humanity has been held in the grips of a war between Ankian and Hersag for thousands of years through the ages of their Aryan store-minders. Pay attention and see how often the hosts of Ancient Aliens so easily shift gears from ancient alien technology into mysticism and shamanism. Through this program, mysticism is tied directly to the UFO cult, and this is by specific design. This is one of their unsaid, speculative bait-and-switch tactics. Now we come to another bait-and-switch tactic, and this is definitely left unspoken. Let's review how often the hosts of the show claim that the gods came down and tampered with our ancestors' genetics. This particular take on alien visitations illustrates some points that need noting. If there were humans already here, then where did they come from? The Ancient Aliens hosts never say, but the idea of pre-existing humanoids on this planet suggests only one thing, and that is Darwinian evolution. It's never conjectured that the Christian idea of God created these humans, although they do often point to Zecharia Sitchin's work to support the idea that the Anunnaki gods created humans. By not reporting where these first humanoids came from, the unsaid part of the presentation through unspoken innuendo is that this species developed along Darwinian theoretical lines until our space buddies landed here and genetically made us more human than the Darwinian prototype. There are more than a few of these episodes that tell a story about how the aliens found undeveloped humans and beefed up their genes. If they were undeveloped humans, then it's assumed by innuendo to be Darwin's evolution that got our species' progenitors that far. That is the unsaid innuendo without a direct endorsement of Darwinism. There is another point I want to make with all of this alien hype, and that is the arrogance the human species has for itself. If there were any truth that we were still Darwinian ape men walking around grunting to each other, where do we get the idea that these high-tech civilizations came here to visit us at all if we were so primitive? I'd say we have a pretty high opinion of ourselves. The fact is there were no Earth humans on this planet until we were created in the alien genetic laboratory about 200,000 years ago. So if we didn't yet exist as a species while other alien races controlled this planet, then where do we get off saying this is our planet? As recent videos should have highly illustrated by now, this is not our planet as an originating species who alien races came here to visit, and it never has been except through our species' hyperinflated, egotistical view of itself and living an illusionary lie. Just take a look at the human race's view of itself. Either we're a more special creation by the patriarchal God and treated better than his alleged angels that revolt in heaven took place over our special position as favored creations, or else we were so special as a species that we have had aliens fawning all over us for thousands of years. Either way you look at it, ladies and gentlemen, the human race is the star of the show. What hubris! Take note of the fact that the cast of ancient aliens have no problem debasing God to a spacesuit-wearing alien, but don't do a damn thing to shake this inherent idea about the specialness of the human species. It's not the reduction of God to his more realistic role I'm making a point with here, ladies and gentlemen, but how we are so full of ourselves as a species that we think aliens are climbing all over themselves to play with the Earth human race because we hold some special place in the universe that makes our species so appealing. Actually, there is some truth to this observation, but it has nothing to do with the egocentric species arrogance we seem to exhibit and believe about ourselves, and this particular topic goes beyond the scope of this presentation. I just ask my subscribers and listeners to stand back and see this species arrogance for what it is, nothing more than an extension of the Hapin virus spread to the level of the entire human race. Now, I'm going to address an issue on another bait-and-switch tactic that is taking place within the public purview, and that is the so-called truth movement and its primary spokespersons. And this is where this gets very difficult for me, ladies and gentlemen, so please bear that in mind, okay? No personal attacks here. Now, I'm liable to piss off quite a few people and lose a bunch of subscribers for bringing this up, but the truth is brutal and no one likes their personal hero's image deflated. But in all fairness, in a presentation such as this, we have to call a spade a spade. The comment threads on my videos are peppered with those who support Michael Tessarian, Mark Passio, Jordan Maxwell, or David Icke, and who feel that the messages we are sharing are the same as these people. I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is true, but only up to a point, and that is the point at which the bait and switch takes place. I asked my viewers in my video Discernment on the Point of Distinction to watch a video about debunking David Icke. The link I provided to that video is no longer a live link, so I'm providing a different link in this video for those who may not have been able to watch that video and would like to watch it in the comment section below. If one takes the time to really dig into what these four horsemen of the truth movement actually profess, they will find at the end of the day that they are each proponents of theosophy in one form or another, and they are not always obvious in expressing their beliefs in the writings of Madame Helena Blavatsky. It takes serious investigation to unearth these theosophical connections, ladies and gentlemen, and that means that we have to investigate the claims of the detractors equally as hard as we have to scrutinize the alleged truth that the truth movement professes. Everyone seems to have an agenda on both sides of this equation, where most of the debunkers are usually defending their own Christian beliefs when they produce their debunking videos. We have to wonder, in the midst of all this stone throwing between these two camps, whether all of it is not contrived as propaganda, since both sides are equal doctrinaires with their own cognitive belief turf to defend. I have stated time and again through my recent videos that the inorganic hierarchy ultimately brought to light through the writings of Madame Blavatsky don't really care which brand of dependency doctrines humans believe, so long as they believe something. In the case of Christianity and Islam, the dependency syndrome is God. In the Theosophical and New Age spectrum, it's the great cosmic oneness, which is served by the ascended masters. Whichever way you cut it, humanity is forced to choose between one form of supernatural authority or another who is presumed to be all-powerful, wiser, and is ultimately suited to tell us what to do as a species. Whichever doctrine one believes is a win-win scenario for the inorganic deceivers, with seemingly opposite sides always casting aspersions against the other, ultimately leaving humans with the presumed choice of deciding which belief to accept, which is really no choice at all. I have digressed a bit with the last comments, but it was a necessary digression. To get back on point about the four horsemen of the truth movement and their bait-and-switch tactics, let's take notice of one thing in particular. Each of these alleged truthers uses history as the platform to set their hook with their audiences. Each one of them seems to be reading from the same worn-out, old Illuminati script, and the timeless conspiracy taking place since the creation of the Illuminati as a spying organization in Bavaria in 1776. These same truthers are all over accusations against the Vatican, the Jesuits, and Christianity in general, but none of them will tell you that these are exactly the same views expressed by Blavatsky when she created Theosophy. These truthers use history as the foundation upon which they bait their hooks and which is used to establish their credibility to their wide listening audiences. You see, folks, history is history, and certain events in history are readily verifiable, and this is why they all use a certain amount of historical reporting to lay the foundation for their presumed credibility. I've done the same thing in my videos because the truth is the truth. If any of the listeners to the Four Horsemen bother to investigate many of these historical facts, they find that much of it can be verified, so they then decide that if they're telling this much truth, that whatever else they say must be truth as well. This is where the switch comes in. Anyone who has been on the path to knowledge for any length of time knows that virtually every conspiracy video on the internet and every book written on the subject holds certain core historical elements. Most of these books written in earlier decades were more honest in the fact that at the end of the day they pretty much stuck to historical accounting to prove their ideas about conspiracies. This is no longer true in the modern era with such powerful platforms as YouTube to serve as a propaganda marketplace to the world. With the advent of the New Age, we find the alleged truth movement not only revealing verifiable historical facts, but now they are taking this platform of history and turning it into a platform to sell mysticism. I have become convinced that the entire movement is a very creation of these forces of Theosophy myself. This is how the switch plays out in the bait-and-switch game taking place in the truth movement by their primary spokesman. These people lay the foundation of their credibility with historically verifiable facts in most cases, and once the audience is convinced of their legitimacy through this practice, then the switch takes place with videos and books professing the validity of the tarot, peddling love and light, professing neo-Gnostic teachings, and claiming to have intimate knowledge about the ancient mystery schools when there is absolutely no written record for anyone to actually know what happened in those ancient mystery traditions and what didn't. That's why they're called mystery schools, folks. These alleged professors of truth start with historical truth, then sublimely switch this truth into a platform to peddle the mystical belief systems of Madame Blavatsky in one form or another. The truth is then converted into doctrinal fiction about mysticism, meditation, shamanism, pushing ideas about Atlantis and Lemuria, lost human supremacy from ages past. And if you pay attention, these ideas are virtually the same ideas being peddled to the masses in the Ancient Aliens scenario. The truth of history gets turned into the dirty laundry of theosophical mystical belief systems, and the unwary supporters of these doctrinaires are not even aware that such a cognitive bait-and-switch has taken place. The truth has so seamlessly been woven into the theosophical mystical preaching that few indeed can tell where the truth stops and the theosophical lies begin. To illustrate this, let's take a brief look at the origins of the alleged continent of Lemuria. The idea of a land called Lemuria was introduced into the scientific community in the 19th century, so the origin of the idea is a kind of late development. There is no ancient record that even vaguely refers to Lemuria, for the simple reason that the presumed lost continent of Lemuria never existed. Enter Madame Blavatsky and Theosophy. We only need to look as far as Wikipedia under Lemuria to find out the modern expansion on the idea about Lemuria, and we find that Lemuria entered the lexicon of the occult through the works of Helena Blavatsky, who claimed that the Mahatmas had shown her an ancient pre-Atlantean book of Dizion. Lemuria is mentioned in one of the 1882 Mahatma letters to A.P. Sinnett. According to L. Sprague de Camp, Blavatsky's concept of Lemuria was influenced by other contemporaneous writers on the theme of lost continents, notably Ignatius L. Donnelly, American cult leader Thomas Lake Harris, and the French writer Louis Joliot. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The whole concept of Lemuria, as well as the fictional Atlantis, are theosophical doctrinal fabrications that have no basis in reality. There is only one historical source reference to Atlantis in all the annals of history, and that is through the writings of Plato. Absent Plato's philosophical creation of Atlantis, there is no other scrap of evidence worldwide throughout time that remotely references a continent of Atlantis. That is until Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophists got their hands on the idea and turned it into the modern mythology that it's become. So, ladies and gentlemen, for any of you who think Tessarian is a pillar of truth, I point you to this video, The War of the Gods, Lemuria vs. Atlantis, and challenge you to tell me how anything we're providing in our presentations mirrors such theosophical doctrines. No matter where you turn in the modern New Age, you're going to find either Atlantis or Lemurian civilizations taken as fact, and the basis for all of this mythology, regardless of who's presenting it, originates with Theosophy and Madame Blavatsky, working strictly from the alleged guidance of the Mahatmas, or Ascended Masters. There is not a scrap of evidence that either of these continents ever existed, yet these alleged truthers spout this anytime they're given the chance. So I have to ask you, particularly those viewers who put so much store in what these theosophical doctrinaires are saying, why do you accept so much of what they profess so blindly? I will readily admit that they are providing some information similar to what we present, but at the end of the day, are they really offering you any solutions about advancing consciousness beyond luring you into believing that there's going to be some alleged mass shift in consciousness and that their mystical information will lead you to this magical event? Are they offering you any practical solutions on how to advance your own cognitive awareness, or are they simply peddling Blavatsky's brand of theosophical mysticism and not offering really any tangible solutions? I won't discourage my viewers about who to listen to and who to avoid. That's up to you. But if you do follow these people, then you need to develop a keen sense of discernment to learn where the truth stops and the inorganic manipulation and theosophical doctrines start. For those who feel the need to endorse these folks on the comments areas of our videos, suggesting that we need to watch these people and what they present, I want to ask you, what makes you think that we haven't used their material as a source for our own development over the years? I have personally put a lot of stock into their information and have extensively studied all of them for years. Much of what they present is valid, but once theosophical doctrines are pushed, or defending Crowley, or chasing Illuminati shadows, or forays into mysticism, I become skeptical. I've quoted all of these people in my earlier work, which I debated removing, but Endall encouraged me to leave up as an example of the way, that perceptions can change. Why should any of you think that we didn't find value in their information up to a certain point of our own development? The difference lies here, ladies and gentlemen. After watching videos and reading books by Ike, Maxwell, Passio, and Tessarian, at the end of the day, they provided no solutions except theosophical mysticism or love and light platitudes. Endall and I both finally realized that in the final tally, none of these people offer any real solutions or workable tools in regard to advancing human consciousness. They can't provide these tools because they just flat don't know how to do what few have achieved. They provide little more than pie-in-the-sky mystical solutions that, over the entire course of human history, have not created one single human with second cognition awareness predicated on the doctrines these mystics teach and believe. The modern so-called truthers are absolutely no different in comparison to the mystics of old. They're simply peddling the same old doctrinal and mystical beliefs as their predecessors, wrapped in a modern spiel, and they are as equally lost in the world of first cognition thinking as everyone else. You are free to follow these proponents of alleged truth on their mystical hamster wheels until such time you are ready to advance beyond such closed-loop illogic and mystical belief systems. When you reach that point, then you will have the discernment to tell the difference in what they profess and what we are sharing through these videos. Until you develop that keen discernment, you will remain lost in the mystical maze of the truth movement, never knowing where the truth stops and the mystical preachings begin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for taking your time to listen to Attaining the Second Cognition. It's greatly appreciated. I extend my gratitude and my heartfelt thanks to any and to all who take the time to open their mind and search for the truth and to push forward in their own cognitive advancement and willful evolution. Once again, thanks for taking your time to spend with me. This is Doug Michael, and until next time, walk in peace.